Welcome to the Journos. I'm Peter Martin. Hugh McDonald and Alison McConnell are here with me to discuss football domestically and a little further afield as well. And hopefully you can join in some of the chat in our comments section below. And if you really enjoy the variety of programme that we're offering you on PLZ Soccer, don't forget you can subscribe to the YouTube channel. And if you download the app, you'll get all the breaking news at your fingertips as well. So what are we going to be talking about? Well, don't tell the truth, it apparently hurts. We will talk about Derek Adams and his condemnation of Scottish football and the standard. We'll also look and ask the question, should we be expanding the Scottish Premiership to take in more clubs? And is there too much football on the go at the moment? There could be a really strong case for burnout in football globally because of the demands on professional footballers. And we'll also, as Alison loves lists, I don't really want to do lists, but Alison every week says, come on, let's have a top 5 or a top 10. So we'll look at the top 10 rare shirts that are collectibles for fans, really, because I'm sure everybody's well aware of some of the most expensive match-worn shirts. But we thought, what are the popular ones among supporters? If you can think of a few, fire them in the comments section below as well. It's always good to get a wee bit of a chat going. Don't tell the truth, it hurts. He's really opened a can of worms since his return, Derek Adams, and his condemnation of the standard of football. I think he said at Morecambe it's 100 times better than what he was witnessing. Now, there's an argument, Hugh, to be had on whether he should have said that and chosen his words a little bit more carefully on the basis of his own side and on the basis of the professionalism of fellow managers and players who work in this industry in Scotland.
Yeah, there's that, but it's very Derek Adams. Anybody that knows him, this kind of thing just comes out of left field, and you say, what? Where did that come from? I've been amazed about the reaction to it because people haven't really been... See, people that criticise him, they've not been criticising him for what he's really said. They've been criticising him for who he is or what he's done. I saw a lot of things. Oh, he wasn't a great player in his day. And you go, well, that's not the problem he was making.
Yeah.
I think, without a doubt, I think the standard has got poorer. And I think you can... It's all to do with money, Peter. It's all to do with... If you go back 20 years even, players in the top flight could go down to the English Premier League, or at least the Championship. Players now that are getting recruited from Leagues 1 and 2. I mean, the standard is poor. I think he was stating the obvious to me.
Well, I mean, there are so many layers to this, comment from Derek Adams. And again, I agree with you on the point of there is no point in deviating away to what he was like as a player, who he is, who he's managing, where he's been. All of that is very much like social media. You can start an argument, and by the time you get to thread number 4, they're all punching the hell out of each other and they've forgotten the original argument. The comment I think he was making was, on the overall standard of football, and maybe you can take that further and say, okay, standard of player, open to debate whether he meant that. The way we're actually playing the football, Alison, because although Hugh has mentioned, this is where at times I disagree with some people, the standard of football and sometimes the managers and the way they want the players to play football. I watched the League Cup final, and the first half of it we get football stopped. Aberdeen and Rangers was dreadful. I've watched numerous games in the last month or so where basically managers have just gone, let's play this into the channel. Let's miss out the midfield. Let's just not get the ball down. Defenders scared to actually put their foot.
Let's not get beat.
Exactly. So there's so many layers to what Derek is saying, but overall I think the standard is poor. But I also think managers and players have to take a bit of responsibility for the way they're told to play in this league, which opens up another thing that we'll talk about later.
Yeah, I think everyone's terrified of being relegated because if you go down, the consequences can be huge. I mean, look at Hamilton Accies and where they are within a couple of seasons. So everyone's terrified when they start to slip. And I think a reflection of the quality within the league would be last season. If you look out with Celtic and Rangers last season, and every team beneath them had gone on desperately tough runs within the season, and yet they were still interchangeable right up until the closing weeks of the campaign, essentially. And this season too, you look at where St Johnstone are now, where they were 3-4 weeks ago. If you put together a sequence of results, maybe 3 or 4 winning games, it can elevate you hugely within the league. And I think that comes down to the fact that teams are so inconsistent.
The other thing about it, and this is where I disagree with some people talking about the overall quality of player, which is he's basically questioning the professionalism and the standard of the player that's playing now. Okay, technically they may not be as good as Hugh, but I would like to see managers emphasise to their players, this is the way I want you to play. I was out on a cold Paisley night with the wind swirling watching St Mirren against Hibs just over a month ago. It was a great game, end to end. They wanted to play it on the deck. There was some really good football. Every now and then they mixed it up and they would go long, but the majority of it was played on the deck and there was chances at either end. It was a great game to watch, full of excitement. I can go back to a situation where Tommy Burns didn't have multi-million-pound signings in 1994. They only lost one game. The standard of football they were being asked to play was absolutely first class. The Celtic fans were revelling in it. They were playing some lovely football. Managers can make a difference to players by telling them what way they want them to play. Sometimes technically you can have a player who just can't pull it off, but if you consistently stick to it, there is that element of it as well. You can't have all the most gifted players in the world. We can't all be the English Premier League. So what we've got here is a situation where I think managers have a responsibility to say, well, what way are you telling them to play?
Yeah, I think so as well. I mean, and of course, great technical ability on both sides doesn't equal a great game at times. I mean, I watched Liverpool and Manchester United, and that wasn't a great game. And the technical ability on the park is elite. You've got Champions League winners and internationalists on both sides. And it just was a poor game because one manager, in my opinion, quite rightly said that we'll have to stop the hemorrhaging here.
Yeah.
We'll have to get out of here. We'll have to get out of Dodge
with a point.
Or at least, unscathed. I think he was perfectly correct to do that. But it produced a sort of poor game. I think the problem with Scottish football, I think, is not is that, and I can say this, like approaching 70 years of age, is that there's a general decline in the quality that we're watching. And this is not pointing bullets or guns at anybody. It's inevitable. Once budgets go down in relative to other leagues, you're going to get poorer players playing in the league.
Yeah, but it's not all poorer Scottish players, Hugh.
It's poor players, full stop.
It's poor players that they're bringing in as well.
Absolutely. I mean,
that comes down to the finances you've got and what you can go and what you can recruit.
It's all down. Everything's down to money. Money decides everything. I mean, if you look at, there was used to be this argument, would Martin O'Neill's team beat Angie's team? And you just shake your head at that and you just go, what are you talking about? Martin O'Neill's team had a team of English Premier League starters in it.
Yeah.
I don't think there was a player near, perhaps from the goalkeeper, they wouldn't have played English Premier League. I mean, did Ange have?
Well, there's an argument to say that Henrik Larsson's possibly the last world-class player to play in our leagues. Do you know what I mean? But my point here is on the basis of Derek saying about the standard, and the argument is technically the players. There's another argument that is the managers and what they're asking the teams to do and the way they want them to play. Some are critical of the way Nick Montgomery wants Hibs to play it out from the back because you're trying to copy the way everybody else is playing it, but you can't play it out from the back if you haven't got the technical players or the players who are not going to become scared when they're boxed in a high press. So there's all sorts of different arguments to it. The biggest one for me, which again I spoke to PFA Chief Executive Fraser Wishart at the weekend, and he said, starting Scottish players in the top league now is hard going. They're not starting Scottish players. There's very few under-21s getting the chance to get 50, 100, 150 games. They're not being given the opportunity. So not only are we stifling the developing talent or giving them a chance to develop, because remember, some players who have got potential, if they get 50 games, they get experience. If they play with older players again, they get to 100, they've got more experience, suddenly they can become better players. We're not getting that. So our grassroots, there seems to be this block. Then you've got teams now who and it brings me nicely on to, is it time to take away the fear factor of the league? But you've got teams who are saying, well, we're just going to bring in this type of player to try and stop us from going down the league, and as Alison said, going out of the league. It's multi-layered, this problem, but I understand where Derek was coming from. I agree with him because, as we mention it every time, Alison, never let your eyes deceive you. You go to the games, you watch them, you see the standard, and you can understand why people are looking and shaking their heads. I can understand why Derek Adams is shaking his head. I wouldn't have said it the way Derek said it, though. That's the thing that...
It was fairly blunt.
Yeah.
It was fairly blunt assessment, and you do think if you're sitting in the cross-county dressing room, you're thinking, well, why, what did you come back up for? However, that's a whole different argument. In terms of the message that you said, I think it's inarguable. I think anyone that's watched Scottish football for any length of time would be able to see a decline in standard. I think it's fairly apparent, but I know what you're saying about it being multi-layered, but there is one commonality to it, and it's money.
Well, does money make you a better player?
I think it gives you an ability to go and bring in better players. I think it gives you a bit of freedom. I think if you've got money there and you've got more experience and better players, it gives you a bit of freedom to bring in younger players, to say that you can make a chance on them.
The argument to that is it's clearly everybody's not using the money wisely.
That's
because he's looking at the standard and he's saying, whatever you're spending your money on, what we're getting is dross.
But see, like the pool that these, like your Ross Counties, Dundees, Motherwells and all that are dabbling now, isn't the pool that we're once dabbling in, it's now gone down to League Two.
If you think, it wouldn't have been that long ago that Motherwell...
National League.
Yeah, but Motherwell could have signed a championship player maybe a decade ago. You could go... That league would be way removed. Even Celtic and Rangers can struggle to match championship teams for salaries.
I was reading Mark Riley's book, which isn't that long ago. I mean, it's the turn of the century kind of thing, and Kilmarnock buying players for £500,000 and things like that. Yeah. Kilmarnock having McCoist and Durant and players that go, my goodness.
Tommy Burns.
I mean, just...
What was the name of the Kilmarnock boy? I loved him in the middle of the park, no movement whatsoever, but he could play a ball into a sixpence.
Oh, the guy...
It begins with an E. Eremenko.
I saw him at Ibrox once, and you just said to yourself, my God, he's a Champions League player if he got his act into gear.
Yeah.
He was wonderful. But now, I think now, if the pool that, you'll see now in Scottish football, Premier League teams are buying players from the National League in England, Division 5.
Yeah.
It's gone completely the other way. I think as well about it is we should be addressing it and saying, this is what we're going on to. How can we improve it? We can't give you any more money because the television deal's a television deal. What can we do to improve what we've got? Can we improve the league? Can we put in stuff about fast tracking Scottish players? Can we do X, Y, and Z? And we should be looking at that because we can't say to teams you should be buying better players because they haven't got the money.
But can I offer you a counter to this? I'm trying to offer as much balance as possible on this argument, which I'm sure lots of people will offer their tuppence worth on. At a time over a 20-year period after maybe 2000, in fact maybe over 15 years, but after about 2005, 2006 when Celtic decided they can't pay people 30, 40, 50 grand a week and they changed their blueprint, you had that kind of a demise in the standard of player that was coming in to Scottish football. I just wonder, I wonder if what's people will look and say, okay, 15 years, we had Bertie Votes, we had a terrible Scotland side, we had a poor coefficient, we started to really struggle to get somebody past the qualifiers in Champions League. The counter argument now is, Alison, well, wait a minute, the coefficient's better now, the Scotland team's qualifying for tournaments, you guys are talking rubbish. There's more players playing in the Premier League.
Yeah, I think what you could say is that Scotland have produced good players in recent years when you look at the national team. as you'll find with all successful Scottish teams that have qualified for major tournaments, a lot of those players are playing their football in more elite leagues. You know, if you look at Billy Gilmore and Scott McTominay and John McGinn, you've got a core, Andy Robertson.
How many starters? Calmac and maybe who else?
Ryan Jack.
Ryan Jack doesn't really start.
He doesn't start. I mean, you're talking about what? You're talking about the goalkeeper. Well, our goalkeeper is usually, you know, if Angus Gunn is injured.
Take Scotland out of it. The coefficient has gone up because Rangers have been flying the flag. Celtic every now and then have added the odd points here and there, but the coefficient to actually qualify straight into the group stages has got better. I'm just trying to offer, I'm playing the devil's advocate and saying, some people, I listen to Neil Doncaster and I think this whole league's going great, financially everything's great, you know, and then all of a sudden in the background people saying, you guys are just negative. You guys in the press are just constantly being negative about it. I'm trying to offer the counter on this and saying, well, wait a minute, if Derek Adams is saying it's so bad a league, well, the Scotland team's qualified. I take your argument with a lot of them playing down south, but the coefficient of points.
That's the one I can't get my head around, Pierre, and I'm glad you brought it up because I was thinking that last week. I'm really strong in my belief. I'm always willing to be changed by people's arguments, but I'm really strong in my belief that this is a poor standard of football we're watching up here. And then I have a wee lot last week where you go, Rangers won in Betis, where Barcelona and Real Madrid haven't won in Betis this season. Celtic beat a good Feyenoord side, and Aberdeen beat a Frankfurt side that's just come off beating Bayern Munich 5-1. Now, there's stories around that. Two of them were dead rubbers, but the Rangers one wasn't. There was ever not forgotten. You say to yourself, I mean, I can't explain that.
It is an anomaly,
isn't it?
And I think Rangers have punched above their weight on a fairly consistent basis in European football across the last 4 or 5 seasons. That run that took them to the final was extraordinary. If you look at the scalps that they took along the way, every round, you get to Dortmund and you think this is the end of the road. You know, every round you almost thought this is a bridge too far. I think you know, they really compounded expectations. I think it's a difficult one. I think you have a reputation and a belief that comes from harnessing the energy of your stadium of saying, you know, we're a real team to beat on our own ground. You sense a belief about Rangers when they play in European football.
The only thing I would say about Rangers, the team that played against Real Betis, wasn't one single Scot.
Well, what I was just about to say is, if you go through that though, how many Scots are playing regularly?
None of them come on either.
I think there were 2 Scots in the final on Sunday.
No, but I'm talking about against Betis.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, so we are making the case for the standard of the league and the emergence of Scottish players, but there's not really a lot playing at that level. Even at Celtic, when's the last time you had a Celtic player come through the academy and go into the first team and make an impact? You've had Callum McGregor,
Forrest,
and James Forrest. Before that, McGeady, Welsh, maybe Tierney, Ralston.
Ralston. I mean, Ralston got a Scotland cap, so he's got a
And again, the argument again, and this is where I think managers have a responsibility, and maybe Derek, the judgment on Derek will come in the second half of the season. It's interesting to see the calibre of player he buys for Ross County in January. But my point here, and this will take us nicely on to our next topic, my point here is that I think managers have a responsibility, and boardrooms have a responsibility to tell the managers, okay, we're hiring you, we want to play this way. We want to play football this way, and again the difficulty is the manager goes, wait a minute, it's my job. I want us to stay in the league. So there's that juxtaposition. But you look at Rangers under Michael Beale, woeful, rudderless, going nowhere. Fans want him out he goes. Same group of players, totally different, better organised under Clement, trophy in the cabinet.
Yeah, I mean the manager's got. The manager's, in many ways, is the most important person at the club because he defines, you know, what the even what the noise outside is, what the narrative is, because it's all down in results. The difficulty, I think football clubs are going down this line of having strategies and having brands. I think the first one I ever saw was with Brentford. When Brentford sacked Warburton and Davy Weir, who were doing really well for them on results, because Warburton and Davy Weir basically wouldn't adhere to their strategy.
Yes.
Their strategy was data-based, this is what we're going to buy and this is what we're going to do it.
Moneyball.
Yeah. And a lot of clubs are now following that, and the manager then has to buy in with that or go. And we're seeing it. We're seeing it in Scotland at the moment with Brendan Rodgers. The most interesting thing I thought Clement has said, and anything he said, was when he came in and he was asked about transfer strategy, and he said, "We're going to be like Bruges," and it went unreported, really. And I went, "What?" Because usually Rangers say we're like we're going to be, and this guy was saying, "No, I'm buying into this. This is what we've got to do. We're going to be like Bruges."
So what is Bruges?
Well, Bruges is a system where you're going to buy at a certain level and a certain strategy of buying, very much like the Celtic strategy, of buying young players that you can shift on. You're not going to be buying the free transfers that you're paying 30, 40 grand a week for, and it might not work out. And even if they do work out, you're not going to get any money from them. So it's a seismic shift that he's sort of bought into. And that's what clubs are going to do now, because they're going to say to the managers, this is the strategy. And I'm not just talking about smaller clubs. I'm talking about big clubs in England. They're not going to be saying, this is a strategy, you must cover it out. And if you don't sign on for it, we'll get somebody that does.
Okay, here's the problem with that. And again, I apologise to everyone, because he's opened a can of worms to 15 or different offshoots in this argument, right? If that's the strategy at Rangers, that's been the strategy at Celtic for the last 20 years. And that strategy is now at breaking point in my mind, because the fans are scunnered with it. Because they think Celtic's a big club, but their European record is absolutely woeful. And they're saying, domestically, they're dominant. They're doing trebles, they've done quadruple trebles, they've won trophies, but they just can't cut it in Europe. So somewhere along the line, that strategy hasn't gone according to plan.
I think you're conflating two slightly different issues. I think the strategy, I think if you to stand back and analyse the strategy across the depth of the last 2 decades, I think you would struggle to say it wasn't successful. I really do. I think it has been a successful strategy.
I'm not saying it's not successful. I'm saying that there's two positions with Celtic, which is a conundrum in itself. Financially, they're the best run club. The board are the best run club in Britain, certainly up there in the top 5. The way they conduct their business, the profit that they've got there, the blueprint of buy someone and hopefully sell them on, it's 100% a success. But the negative part of it is now Celtic fans are going and paying top dollar to see their team getting spanked in Europe year in, year out.
But if you look at Rangers, for an example, obviously not in Champions League level, but a tier below, and you can see that it's been successful, you would have to ask questions, I think, almost about management and coaching, and say, where are the failures that you're not able to compete? Because Celtic should be able to compete, maybe not at Champions League level, but they should be able to compete at Europa League level. You should be getting more out of the squad. There has been a systematic failure across recent seasons not to get that. I hear the argument, we have discussed this umpteen times about, if you want to be successful in the Champions League, you need to go and recruit 2 or 3 bits of quality. I just don't know that it's financially viable or sensible. If you to push the boat out, for example, to say, I'm going to bring in 2 or 3 players that I think will take us out of the group stages of the Champions League, you're talking probably more money than what you would actually earn from qualifying out of the Champions League. And it's a gamble. To start with, it's a gamble. There's no guarantee that it would work, and you run the risk of annihilating the internal structure of the dressing room, of the ceiling that you've set in terms of salaries. You run the risk of a germ going through your entire squad to say you've got 2 or 3 guys earning double what they're sitting next to you. That never ends well. So I think I don't know that Celtic really have another option than what they're doing. I think recruitment for me has to be better. I think the recruitment system at the club could be modernised. I think it could be widened. I think the net could be widened. There's been some success obviously with Ange when he brought in players from the Asian markets. Again, so there are the obvious success stories there. Equally, you've got a clutch of players now that you would say, well, it's not worked or it's not working. But I think the modernisation of a recruitment office within the club would be a different argument. I don't think Celtic are ever going to get back to a point where you can say we can afford to go and buy a guy at 24 or 25 who's just about to hit his prime and who'll have offers on the table from other, more lucrative offers on the table from other clubs, and we'll match it, and we'll spend 40 grand a week, 50 grand a week to bring them in. I just don't think it's an unrealistic argument.
Well, what you're advocating then is status quo, keep it going the way it's going, and you're getting spanked in Europe, yeah?
Yes and no. I just don't think it's financially viable to go a different route. I think you want to be getting more out of your recruitment. Celtic still have money. They still spend a lot of money.
Yeah,
if you look at what they spent in the summer, you have to spend it more wisely.
The recruitment's woeful.
I would agree with you. I think the recruitment side of it has to change, but the target audience, your target market, I don't think will change.
And it also goes back to managers and what they've got there and what they've got to deal with. And you've got to get on with it. I'm listening to a former Celtic manager who's saying Brendan Rodgers just has to deal with what he's got there and try and get more out of them. He's inherited a treble-winning side. Philippe Clement has got a Rangers side and suddenly got a trick out of them that Michael Beale couldn't get.
I think the crucial thing with a manager and how you judge a manager is when he's landed with a squad and after 6 months, where you get to say, who's he improved?
Yeah.
Who's he improved?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And you say to yourself, after 6 months, you're watching Brendan Rodgers Celtic, you say, who's better than they were last season? Mattarelli. Nobody else. Nobody else.
Whereas go back a few seasons, Greg Taylor, even Callum McGregor, you could go through.
The team. Even Brendan's first time round, you could look at the team and say, do you know what? Brown's a much better player. I thought Brown was out with the washing when
Yes.
and he improved.
But he had a dreadful manager in there before.
Nah, but he did improve him.
Yeah,
I mean, there was other players in the team he improved as well. But I'm looking at this team. I'm looking at this team now, and I'll look at this team now, and I say to myself, and we could have a symposium in this. Never mind a programme of the layers of what's going wrong and who's going wrong and what's going wrong. But at one point, you've got to say to yourself, do you know what? The only one person that really can do anything about it until the transfer window opens is the manager.
Yeah. On that point then, we've obviously argued the Celtic and Rangers and the difference in what's happened with a manager in place. And I think great credit to Philippe Clement at the moment. Big questions being asked of Brendan Rodgers from the treble-winning side that he inherited. As you go down, and again, it's difficult to get that definitive answer to what Derek Adams has opened up as a can of worms. But at the bottom end of out with Celtic and Rangers, you've got that whole clutch of 10 teams trying to come up with a winning formula that might get them Europe, that might get them the odd cup if Celtic and Rangers fall foul of the odd defeat. And of course, the other thing is, which I mentioned to a Premier League manager who answered me this morning on this. I sent him a text just basically on the basis that we're now in a situation where you've got, start of the campaign, start of a league campaign, you've got 8 teams trying to avoid relegation.
Yep.
Now, I don't think it's healthy. I do think there is a need for us to expand the league. I am loath to even listen to all these excuses coming in about they want their 4 games. You can still work the permutations out, but I think 16 or 18 teams in that league, and of course, gives people the chance to stop playing fear football. One of the managers said to me, you don't get the opportunity to bring in young players because the pressure of staying in the league is unbelievable. He says you get the odd exception, and he said this to me today, you get the odd exception because there is a player that's so good that you have to play him. So you always get the odd exception that will force his way in. But obviously, you get, in his mind, he had 6 teams that were fighting relegation right away, and then it is eventually dropped down to what it is now at the moment, 4, with 1 looking marooned, which is obviously David Martindale's side. But we need to look at ways of, yes, generating more income for the other clubs, but I think expanding the league would help no end. And then, of course, I think there needs to be a radical change at the SPFL boardroom level where they change their outlook on selling the product, packaging it up, and stop this constant where we don't have big companies that can all barter against each other. We don't have a TNT, Sky, Amazon,
ESPN,
all that battling away. What we've got is, and I'm talking from experience, what we've got is a chief executive who says, well, you might have to pay this. Well, what is the figure? No, you'll need to pay it because they're paying this. So you give us an offer. So what you've got is a situation where you have to put in a blind offer, hoping that maybe the board will agree it. and you might be paying 10 grand more than somebody else. And what we also have is a monopoly where one company, the BBC, has dominated for the last 20 years to the detriment of everybody else in my book. So there's no competition as far as packages are concerned. Commercial television's dead and buried. Commercial radio's dead and buried. And now you only have the BBC who've got a monopoly on broadcasting.
Yep.
Not healthy.
Absolutely not.
You know, so what we've got to do is change that. For me, change the league, change the boardroom, change their attitude to marketing, and that will stimulate more money coming into it. We need a fresh approach, a radical fresh approach.
I agree totally, and I think you're right on what they've got to be more proactive about what they do with their product. They might have to loss lead in what they do with their product, offer a lot more to outside agencies. Say, listen, you know you're going to promote the sport. There are people, places like this and other places we say, listen, we know you're promoting the sport. We know, you know, you're not going to pay £1 billion, etc., etc. We'll give you this. We'll give you the highlights package. 48 hours after the games of that, we'll give you for buttons to promote it, to do a show on it. And you'll be to be more, you know, okay, the BBC will still get first bite when it's nice and hot, but yeah, you can use our clips on a Tuesday show, and you know, be more embrace the cult of growing the game through working with businesses rather than just working off what they're giving them. I think there's been a lot of sort of moribund thinking, Peter. There needs to be huge discussions, open discussions, because there's a lot of intelligent people in the Scottish game, really smart people in the Scottish game saying, listen, this is where we are. How do we get to where we are? We're not going to be the EPL, we're not going to be La Liga and all that, but how do we get a really vibrant product that we can say to people in other countries as well as our own, hey, have a look at this. This is what we do. Full stadiums, Friday night football, I don't know. Summer football, I don't know, when it's easier for the satellite people to take you on board because their product's diminished. Just have thinks and thoughts about it. Instead, we're just ploughing the same road. And the biggest problem, as we all know, is the voting system.
Yes.
Because you can't vote, you can't change the voting system because of the voting system.
And I hate to say
it's like 1984.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't want to go down a road where I'm obviously going to, you know, suffer the wrath of people. But the big two have strangled Scottish football with that, and it's not allowing us, as you say, to get to a point where even if people have a broader idea that's for the benefit of everyone, the big two think, no, if it's not going to benefit us, we're not letting it happen. And that has happened with I remember speaking to Lachlan Cameron from Ayr United, and he said, you know, you've got to embrace the American thing here. You've got to go out and say, if we're going to sell it, let's sell it for the betterment of all. But that hasn't happened because they're strangling everybody because they want all the money. And at the end of the day, self-interest, we only have to look at the last 5 years, self-interest has killed it.
I think too, like, we have lived through a fantastic digital revolution of what you can do and what you can project. I don't think anyone has properly analysed what's the best way then to promote the product that you've got as quickly and monetise it as efficiently as possible. For me, I think you can't buy a game still. Like, you could do it during COVID, obviously. You could go in, you want to watch St Johnstone against St Mirren Saturday, go in, pay your tenner, watch the game. And I know there's an argument to say it prevents people maybe going along to the game. I still think you should be looking to maximise all of these things, to put it out, to put things out.
See, the incredible thing about Scottish football is the popularity of Scottish football in Scotland.
Yeah, absolutely. Their head of population, it repeatedly.
I was at Villa leaving on Saturday, you know, Scottish Junior Cup game, rain bucketing down, games on the telly, in the clubhouse, you could look at a game, I don't know, English games on, full Premier League. There must have been 500 or 600 people at that.
Yeah. But can you imagine if the football was better, Hugh? I remember this. Here's another part of it, and it goes back to what we're talking about with the manager I spoke to this morning. if the football was better, if the quality of football was better, we'd have even more people. If the marketing of it was better, if the ability to make it an experience coming to a ground was better. And I know clubs are trying hard to do that, but if all of that was better, we'd have even more people and we'd have even more money coming through the gates. The problem is, we have a situation where 1975, you have the change to the Premier League, right? Now, Jock Stein was a meticulous manager who said, listen, when we're playing this side, watch this guy, he likes to cut in his left. Watch this guy, he likes to bomb down the right. He was ahead of his time, right? Like many of those great managers, they looked ahead at the opposition as well. I can remember in the 80s, when they'd rejigged the Premier League again, and of course it's this 10-team Premier League or 12, Paul McStay said to me, it's repetitive. And he said to me, they can tell which way I'm going to jig. Every move is now so they know predictable. You know it off by heart. This league now is in a situation where not only do you have the predictability of it, you also have the fear factor. Where we're in a situation where you're constantly going to get a centre half who's going to bump the ball 50 feet in the air away from anywhere, or you're going to get a ridiculous situation which we're finding ourselves in now. The league starts, 6 of them, they're not going to be blood youngsters. They're going to take what they've got and try and just avoid getting relegated. And if that means rank rotten football, it's rank rotten football.
Yep. Although you would say there's a few that have bucked against that. I mean, Craig Levein gave a 16-year-old kid his debut at the weekend.
So did Nick Montgomery.
Lennon Miller
Whittaker
coming through at Motherwell, Rory Whittaker at Hibs. I think you have to be encouraged by those signs and by managers being brave enough to play them. Lennon Miller's obviously out now because he's injured, but you look at the run that Motherwell have been on, and he was happy to stick by him and keep him in. I do agree with what you're saying. I think I think we would all be in agreement that the quality of the league has suffered dreadfully because of the lack of finances. It's how you fix it that's the bigger question. Yeah, absolutely. You need to change the structure of the people who are going through the same thing all the time, every year, same thing. You need to change it. That board needs changed, that thinking needs changed, that power base needs to be changed to change the way we approach our game and to get fresh people in to actually broaden out our ideas and to say, okay, I'm now going to tell you how we're going to market it. This is how we're going to sell it. This is how we're going to sell it to a broader audience. This is how we're going to embrace the digital audience and accommodate them and, of course, the broadcasters as well. You only have to look, I'll simplify it for you. We have a situation where you watch a game now and on the middle of the park, the 2 guys are talking to the camera while everybody's warming up, and then occasionally a manager will stroll on and chat to them. Not up here. Not a chance. They wouldn't let you in anywhere. There's nothing. I think that's a big problem. I think access and the lack of access is a huge problem. Do you know why? Because the same dinosaurs who are running it right now will not allow the change. They won't allow the change. And that's why there needs to be a complete change in structure, attitude, mindset, broaden our horizons, start to promote the game and start to get more people who want to actually promote Scottish football.
Absolutely, I agree totally. And but to end on this subject on a kind of real positive note, what I've found more and more, we're not going to talk games in Scotland because I don't do that now, is how much Scottish football and Scottish people love Scottish football. There's a real passion out there to be tapped. There's a real culture that, see, a marketing man could come in and say, this is ripe for the. You've got a group of fans here. You've got a support here where it means everything to them. It's a way of life. It's tradition. It's just what you do. It's what we do. You pass it down. We're all sitting here now. We pass it down to our sons, our daughters. We got it from our dads, our grandfathers. This is a real proper football culture. And you would think that somebody coming in here and saying, how do we embrace that? And not only embrace it, shove it to the world to say that this is the home of football. This is where football was invented. This is the passing game of football that the Messis are doing. This is where it happened. This is where it came from. Yeah. And this is what we can do to promote it, not only in Scotland, but outside. And simple things, Peter, just like find a slot where we can put it to the world. Okay, you've got your primary broadcasting deals. We'll have to do the big monies and the BBCs and the Skies like that. have secondary deals. Have deals where you can say, you can pick this up on a Tuesday afternoon or a Wednesday morning.
Yep.
We would be quite happy to say, right, well, Saturdays, I'm talking for you, I would presume you'd be quite happy to do a whole show with Saturday's highlights, and we could analyse it, or you could get Lenny or Jig in to say, well, that was because it...
The big problem is, though, Hugh, when, and I can't believe it, as we hit our 11th year on this programme, easily maybe 8 or 9 years ago when I did buy the rights, they strangled me. Strangled me. And a couple of really big clubs really went out of their way to put the blocks on.
It's so myopic. It's incredibly myopic in terms of what the bigger picture is. It really is. But I think access is another one. Access is a huge problem. I can't remember the last time anyone spoke to a player or a manager out with the confines of a press conference. Current player and manager. It is, over the last decade, it is diminished to the point where you might get the odd one in a Sunday broadsheet or something. You might get the odd bit of access. That has to change. That culture has to change. So what you have there is clubs saying, we want to protect our assets, we want to monetise this unique content that we have access to, rather than widening the net and saying, what's a bigger picture here that can financially benefit the entirety of the game and the structure of the game and the marketing of the game. And access for me is fundamental to it. And the point that you make, when you watch football coming from down south and you have access to the dressing room, or you have access to managers coming over straight after the game, coming over and standing with pundits, and some of it's fun as well. You hear Ange Postecoglou digging up Gary Neville for what he said. There's an entertainment value that goes along with that too, and that's essentially what you're in the business of. It's entertainment.
Absolutely. And our the other difference we have up here is, and I think I'm not saying every one of them, but the majority of them, PR people, are there to say no. They're not there to promote the game. They're just saying no. They're just there as blockers.
It's obstructive. A lot of the times they are. It's obstructive rather than constructive or helpful.
Or positive. Anyway, I don't mean it to be in a negative. It's something that I think needs to be changed. I think I'm getting ever closer to my Jerry Maguire document. If you do watch the video, that's exactly what Scottish football's all about. I'm sure there'll be times when a player will walk out and go, I can't sign your football card because that's not the official sponsor. But it's the best thing I can do is an American accent. Okay, let's talk about something that I think is, certainly from a player's perspective and the global stage, is becoming ever more difficult. Not necessarily, well, possibly in Scotland as well, when I think of the amount of games Callum McGregor has played. Bernardo Silva highlighted that there's a real fear now of players being absolutely burnt out because you're playing Premier League, you're going into either a European Championships qualifiers or World Cup qualifiers. Now there's a Club World Cup tournament as well. It's relentless. Some managers actually operate on the basis that you're a professional footballer, you're not getting any days off.
Yeah, well, the big thing about it is we've got to kill the first argument, which is like the first, we can hear people shouting at the telly, they're fit young men, they should be able to play every day. Of course they're able to play every day. They could play 4 games. They could play from 9 o'clock in the morning to midnight. That's how fit they are. But what we're talking is about the effects of that.
Yeah. The burnout.
There's effects on performance, obviously, because you can't maintain the levels of performance. But there's effects on burnout of the body and the propensity to injury. I mean, it's a fact.
And the mental aspect.
And the mental aspects are very interesting as well because of the pressure. I think it's gone over the edge. I think people say we're getting to the stage where it might be. I think it's over now. The players are playing too many games.
Well, Bernardo Silva's quotes that I witnessed in the last 24 hours was interesting. He says, I'm not going to lie, sometimes I feel tired. All of us, we feel tired for some games as well because we play games every 3 days. We don't rest. We've got no Christmas. We have no summer. But that's the price you pay for being at a top club and fighting for all competitions. And of course, he accepts. Our dream was to play at this level. But he's obviously right to highlight the fact that if you are a top-level
He's
player...
not complaining. See, a lot of people jump and say, oh, he's moaning about
he's
the
got
amount of
£1
It's basically just presenting an argument to say this is probably detrimental to the overall quality of performance that you're seeing.
Yeah.
And what it is, essentially, is the squeeze on football. You're trying to squeeze every ounce, every penny out of it that you possibly can, to the point where what you're going to have is an annual... a year of constant football, that there'll be a week off for people, 10 days off, and you'll be back. Because if you think of all the competitions that are taking place internationally and domestically, there is not much downtime at all. It'll almost become like a circuit. You're just on the circuit.
But the reason why there's a squeeze is because you also have a power struggle between UEFA and FIFA trying to grab the players to play in their tournaments. And then, of course, you've got this constant search for greed. It's like the dinosaur eating everything in front of him. You've got this constant search for, well, we've got this massive deal. We need to get another deal now. Last year's figures are not great. You know, last year's figures when we landed the new Premier League deal's great, but this year we want to sell it to ABC in America. And we've got to chase those figures.
Yep. And I think the interesting thing about it, and the interesting dynamic about it, is if I was, and the Saudis will have people much more intelligent than me doing their strategy at the moment, that'd be one of the things I would say, come to our league and play less and earn more.
Yeah.
And I think they'll say, and I think that is what the fissure between UEFA and FIFA will be increased by independent leagues saying, listen, come to an independent league, Live Golf, for example. Come to an independent league, because that's what they've done with Live Golf. Said, we'll treat you better. Okay, initially, FIFA and UEFA will say to you, this will be, you can't play international football again. Just go, fine. Because they'll come back for you more than you'll go for them.
Yeah.
And by the way, not playing international football, I mean, you'll be much more relaxed mentally, physically, you'll be fitter, and you'll earn a lot of money. It could be a selling point, because what's going to happen is push is going to go to shove on so many things. One, players, their fitness, mentally and physically. Two, clubs who are seeing their players taken away and injured during tournaments that they have no time for whatsoever.
Yep.
You talk to Jurgen Klopp about the World Cup or the Euros, he'd be going, what a pain in whatever that is.
Yeah.
There's no upside for Liverpool in it. So I think there's a lot of commercial, psychological, emotional, physical pressures coming on the status quo.
Yeah, whether that changes or not, I'm not too sure. I think it's going to become even more intense for the players. And as you said, not only exhaustion, injuries, mental health, diminished performance, as well as, of course, your career, longevity. You know, not everybody's a Ronaldo, by the way, Alison.
About just saturation point in terms of an audience as well. You get to a point where there's just football all the time. Sometimes you look forward to watching a game because you've not seen a game for a couple of weeks. If you think of what the summer used to be like,
The summer we're desperate to get back.
There's a real. Now I think there is a point where you feel. I feel like come the end of the season, I always feel a bit like I'm sick of watching football. You've maybe watched 50, 60 games. You get to a point where you think you feel your appetite for it waning.
But I've got that cut-off point in my head.
I get to May, I get the end of May.
No, but I've already got to that point in my head about a standard of game that I will not watch. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm not as obsessive as I was before, you know. And I hate to do this, to tell you this joke, Ali, but it's not a joke. It was actually a real life thing that happened. But my nephew and I lived in a flat together, and we would watch anything that had a ball in it, right? And we were watching this game, and the girl that I was going out with came in, and she said, "What are you watching?" And I said, "We're watching this game." She went, "You two watch football all the time. From now on," she said, you can't watch," what she said, "you can't watch piddly games. You're only allowed to watch major games, right?" So, because my nephew and I could speak to each other telepathically, he's saying she's for the off, right? So she came in the next time. And she says to us, "There's football on again. What's this you're watching?" This is Leighton Orient against Accrington Stanley. It's the big one in the second division. So there is a level. There is a level. That I just have to tell you that relationship never lasted. You know, she was for the off.
The thing
She's watching now.
She is, and a big hi, Sarah.
She still looks out for that Leighton Orient fixture.
It is funny, like, again, going back to the old dad stuff or the granddad stuff, I mean, that football on the television was a clear the decks moment for when we were young.
Yeah.
You know, stop the clock.
No Sky.
You know, take the phone out, shut the curtains. There's a game on tonight. You know, FA Cup final replay is on tonight. You know, at school we're going to get a game. Now, of course, you're just like that, flicking thing through. I haven't, because of moves, I haven't got a telly at the moment. But normally, I'm horrible for football. I'm obsessive. I can watch it, and I don't know if it's something to be proud of or something to be ashamed of.
What's your relationship status?
But you know who you're like? You're like my sister. She has, if there's no football and she's raging, she watches football all the time. And it doesn't, as long as there's a game on, she'll watch it.
I'm terrible for that as well. I mean, I laugh because when my old flat, there was, you know, I'd be doing, in my day job, we were doing Champions League, finals, things like that. And my old flat, there was a park out the back where an amateur team played, and I used to go out for a walk, and I would find myself on my day off, you know, hammered down rain, watching the amateur game, going, what am I doing? I wouldn't even know what teams were playing or the score. I'd just be...
Have a wee look. Yeah. Anyway, before we finish...
Sad Parsons.
Absolutely. I'm going to finish on a positive note, if that's humanly possible on this programme, because... some of our staff, we always like you know, I collect strips from time to time, but some of our staff are right into it as well, Alison. And we were trying to come up with the top 10 rare and collectible shirts, but not shirts necessarily that have been match worn by Maradona.
Yeah, prestigious shirts.
You know, the match worn ones, no, these ones can go for millions. I'm just talking about the ones that fans look at and they say, I'd love to have that top, because...
Like a vintage top, almost. Yeah.
And I had 5 that I think they're worth about 500 quid if you can get a hold of one. And these are replica shirts, Hugh. So the Barcelona Orange 1992 shirt, which Ronald Koeman scores in the game against Sampdoria to win the cup. The manager that day was Cruyff. So Koeman scores, they win 1-0. It's that orange shirt. If you've got one of those, or you're looking for one, you could pay up to about 500 quid. Now, these 5 that I've given you are all around that mark. The ultimate one, Napoli home shirt, Maradona 1990-91, 500 quid easily. It's a classic, isn't it? Because that's the time when we're talking about saturation point. That's the time when you would watch Channel 4. I'm going to watch it. You know?
That made all those tops really trendy at a point, like all the Serie A tops, the old Juventus one.
Yeah, Holland 1988.
Van
Basten shirt, which has got a design on it as well.
It's a wee jaggy thing.
It's a wee jaggy thing. That was the marketing. Here's the holiday. It's got a wee jaggy thing on it. The next one is the USA 1994 shirt.
Really?
Which, well, I think as soon as I heard 1994, and I hope I'm in the right zone, but as I heard 1994, I automatically thought of Lalas.
Oh, the beard.
Yeah, with the beard, the red-haired boy. Yeah, well, of course, that in that tournament. But the USA shirt is quite an iconic design, as is the Soviet Union from 1988, 1989. Yes. So those shirts are about 500. Is any other ones?
That Dortmund 95 one, the Paul Lambert.
97.
That's
definitely one of them. That's up there about 400 or 500 quid.
I'm not the wrong person to ask about strips, because strips kind of pass me by. I mean, we were kids and you never bought with strips, but the one that always... I love Ajax strips. I think that's a proper strip.
Yes.
And I would love to take one of them when they were the kings, the real kings in the early 70s. I always loved that strip, the simplicity of it and just the classic of it. Look at them for
And as people say here, and as Blair, one of our broadcast journalists, mentioned, there's a lilac Rangers top, which they only wore about 3 times, which is worth a pretty penny. And of course, the brown Celtic People's top.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Someone vomited over the top of it.
It's just terrible. It's one of the worst tops ever. And then there's another one, which I don't know if you remember. I think Tommy Hutchison was playing for Coventry at the time, but they had a brown away strip. Now that's worth a pretty penny. It was a dreadful colour. Brown as a football top is just not happening. But that's another one that's iconic.
It lends itself to a particular
And then there's another
kind of
one,
insult.
which is the Arsenal one with Lee Dixon. It's an away top, which had a kind of a really out there, design on it, which caught the imagination. Of course, the reason why I look into these things is because one marketing executive said to me that as it became more popular, in the 90s, they then started to say, okay, let's tap into the kids and see what they like. And they responded to, colours that would catch your eye, and that's where Celtic eventually came out with the Bumblebee.
I remember the Bumblebee.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the marketing teams were saying, how can we get
The kids
the kids to get mental strips that they'll buy? For me, the most iconic one that I think of when I was growing up as well was the Aberdeen away top that they wore to win the Super Cup. With the pinstripe.
Oh
on it.
yeah, I remember that. I remember that now.
Celtic with that lime green now, the Love Street top, the 1986 top, that would be
And another one that I think if anybody's got one would be worth an absolute pretty penny was Hibs George Best Buckta on the front. Do you remember that?
That was the first sponsorship on a shirt as well in Scotland.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that right?
I think so.
Yeah. Hibs, I think, were the first to have a sponsor on the shirts. But
The one I've got, I'll just do this, is this sort of funny story was when Ali would be about the age of your Joseph, and that was lying watching the Celtic Rangers game in the telly, and my mate came and says, can I come round and watch? These are the days when everybody had Sky, and he says, can I come round and watch the game with you? And I said, aye, come round. He said, my brother wants to bring him around, come round. So his brother came round and sat on the couch, and I said to his brother, I said, who was the best player you ever played with, Ali? This was Ali, the guy in the side. He says, definitely Van Basten. And my son got up as if he had an electric shock and came through the kitchen when I was getting a bottle of beer. He's at it. And it was Ali Dick, of course, who'd played with Van Basten at Ajax. And Ali just wouldn't believe him until the next day. Ali Dick came round to the house with a picture of a front three of Van Basten, Dick and Bergkamp, and an Ajax strip for Ali, and what a match worn one, which he's still got. So that's my football strip story.
And that's worth a few quid. Ali, hold on to it. It's as simple as that. Some strips, I'm sure you can come up with a few yourself that you can put in the comments section below. At times, the Journos show, sometimes we can get down a negative line. And of course, there was moments in that programme where we offered the light, the way and the truth, and possibly the yellow brick road out of the darkness that we're in at the moment. But you can offer your own opinion as well. We'd love to hear it. Don't forget to subscribe to PLZ Soccer's YouTube channel if you get a chance. We'd love you to join the football family. We're right across social media. Thank you to so many of you who are enjoying a lot of the variety of programming. We've got one-to-ones. We've also got the women's football show, the Journos, as well as the football show itself, and not forgetting Straight Talk. So lots to watch, lots to enjoy, including our journalists going out and bringing you the best of Scottish football. It's on the website, it's on the app, and it's on our YouTube channel. From Hugh, from Alison, and from myself, Peter Martin, I want to wish you a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and we'll be back in the new year with more Journos shows. From everyone here, thank you for listening, thank you for watching.